Hey guys, I've taken inspiration from Moist Critical for my outfit today. Garmlings, what would you say is the most satisfying thing on this earth? Is it beating that fucker who was talking shit up 11-4 on Mirage? Is it hitting a massive 10-leg parlay? Or is it going to a Mexican restaurant and then bringing out the chips and salsa before you even order? I would have to personally say that maybe the most satisfying thing on this earth is watching someone get revenge. John Wick, after his dog gets killed, coming out of retirement and going on to murder everyone who was even somewhat involved. That is an incredibly satisfying revenge arc. And while not as good as John Wick, we do still have some of these revenge stories in Counter-Strike, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. So without wasting anyone's time, let's get into it. Armlings, do you see that over there? Bro, what is that? It's been staring at me for hours. Ah! Oh, no worries. It's just that new knife that I bought from today's sponsor, Skins Monkey. Skins Monkey is an instant trading site with an incredibly large selection of skins, low commission, and an easy search filter system. Buying or trading your skins has never been easier. And if you use my link today, you can get up to $5 completely free. They also have daily, weekly, and monthly giveaways on their freebies tab, along with a 35% deposit bonus if you use code Garmour. If you want to check out Skins Monkey, scan the QR code or hit the link below. Thank you to them for sponsoring, and back to the video. Zwei would begin his Counter-Strike career like many others, on a random team with a suspect name, and that team would be Vaseline Worms. Then 7 months later, in June of 2024, he'd finally get his shot. It wouldn't be on a tier 1 team just yet, but instead a very solid tier 2 team in Namiga. His teammates would be Xanter, Risky Bob, IGL Lear, and Opper Khan. And immediately after Zwei would join, the team would win Res European Series 5, and Zwei would be the highest rated player on the team with a 1.17 rating. Throughout this year, they would go on to win 2 more tier 2 tournaments, but maybe most importantly, they had made it through the Perfect World Shanghai qualifier. Maybe the easiest way to get noticed as a Counter-Strike pro is to have a phenomenal performance at a major, and now Zwei and all of Namiga would get their shot at Shanghai, except for one small problem. They didn't qualify to the major just yet. They only qualified to the tournament's RMR, and well, that puppy was stacked. They were in a group with Vitality, Mouse, FaZe, Na'Vi, Cloud9, Fnatic, Gamer Legion, BetBoom, and Falcons, and only 7 of the 16 teams here would make it through. Namiga would end up going 1-3 and not even really being close to qualifying, but then again, they weren't favored to make it through with this stack group anyways, so for the rest of 2025, they'd have to go back to tier 2 and bide their time until the next one. After Zwei ended 2024 with a solid 1.09 rating, the first half of 2025 was not great. Namiga was in some tier 1 tournaments, but bombed out of all of them, and along with this, they also just weren't really winning tier 2 tournaments anymore. Well, they weren't even really getting close at this point. But despite the team looking like it had taken quite a dip in form, Zwei was playing pretty well, posting a 1.14 through the first 6 months. But then would come their next big opportunity, the Blast Austin Major. Except this time, there was a change to the format. An extra stage was added, so now there would be 32 teams here instead of 24. And RMRs were removed in favor of MRQs. This meant it would be significantly easier for tier 2 teams to make the major, and Namiga were one of the ones that benefited, beating Big, BetBoom, and Gamer Legion to qualify through 3-1. And in this MRQ, Zwei would be the highest rated player with a 1.47. Now Zwei and all of Namiga would have their chance to show tier 1 teams what they were made of. But in stage 1 of the major, Namiga would start 0-1, losing to BetBoom. But then they would rattle off 3 straight wins to qualify 3-1. Zwei would once again be the best player on the team with a 1.24, and at this point, Namiga had kind of already surpassed their expectations, making it to stage 2, and this is kind of where most people expected them to start falling off. Their first game in stage 2 would be against Pain, who would cook them 13-7. They'd then squeak out a win against MIBR 16-12, lose to 3D Max 13-11, and now we're 1-2. In this 1-2 game, they'd have to play M80 for their tournament lives. This is when the boys around Zwei would decide it was their turn to lock in, and Khan's 1.64 rating would help push Namiga to the 2-2 game. But now they'd have to play Heroic, a team that had just gone 3-0 in stage 1, and were one of the most popular picks to go 3-0 again in this stage. They had floundered a bit to find themselves in this 2-2 game, but they were still heavily favored to beat Namiga and make it to stage 3. This is when Zwei would drop a 1.54 rating and push Namiga to the 3rd stage. Counting stage 1 and stage 2 of this major, Zwei was the 4th highest rated player with a 1.3. He was dominating and a huge reason Namiga was even able to make it this far. Stage 3 did prove to be a little too much for the team though, as they would lose to Na'Vi, Vitality, and once again Pain to go 0-3. Overall though, this was a great showing for Namiga and especially Zwei, as he showed he could compete against some of the best teams in the world, and it seemed like this was enough to get him poached to the number 3 ranked team in the world. Zwei would be replacing Magix on Team Spirit, and similarly to his time on Namiga, instantly after his addition, the team would win a tournament. Well, actually they would win 2. IEM Cologne and Blast Bounty Season 2 finals back to back. At Cologne he posted a 0.92 rating, and in the Blast Bounty Land playoffs a 1.12. But after this is when things became extremely messy. Zwei wouldn't post another positive rating at a tournament while in a Spirit jersey. And during the start of his time on the team, there was some weird stuff going on with Zontix, as he was rumored to leave and kind of just stayed around for a while until he was eventually replaced with tenure. But after this move, the team just kind of looked dysfunctional. Vu made a great video on his second channel talking about why the team wasn't really working, and if you want to go watch it, I'll link it in the description. But for a brief summary, his thoughts were that the team had some discomfort and a big lack of synergy. There was poor spacing, big gaps between the first and second player in pushes, hesitations, mismatched timings, and a lack of support / utility for Donk's aggressive plays. Previously, when Magix was on the roster, it seemed like him and Donk were inside of each other's brains, allowing Donk to thrive, and well, Zwei just wasn't really able to do this. This would not only cause Donk to have a dip in form, but Zwei to post only a 0.92 on his T sides, while his CT sides were a 1.0. During the rest of Zwei's time in the team, Spirit would not really get close to making another finals, barely even making the playoffs half the time, until the Budapest Major. Spirit would look strong going 3-0 in groups, and in their first playoff game, they would be up against Falcons, where Zwei would go fucking nuclear.
The free side, just shoot 1-2, no donks. This is it. No, Nico getting entry, but that's fine. 4v5 still. No, boys. Wait, what's up? Bye, Pigs and Deagle.
And the improvement for Zwei tonight, much needed.
Being the highest rated player on Spirit with a 1.59 in a 2-0 win. It seemed like finally, maybe Zwei had really broken through and he could be the piece that Spirit needed. Unfortunately, this was followed up by a disaster class. In the semis, they'd play Vitality and go up 12-6 on Mirage, then somehow choke the game away with a horrible T side and lose 17-19. Zwei would end the game as the lowest rated player with a 0.53 rating. After that, Spirit was so mentally cooked they kind of had no chance on the next map and lost dust 13-8. The team chemistry was simply not working, so instead of giving it more time, Spirit decided to bench Chopper and Zwei and bring back Magix and Zontix. Zwei had only lasted 5 months with his first tier 1 team, and during his time there, he posted a 0.96 rating. At the time, this was a fairly expected move. Zwei and Chopper did look like the 2 weakest links in the team, and while after getting benched, it was probably a time Zwei should have just stayed off social media as a whole because he was getting dunked on. This was due to him saying Makaze on Na'Vi would be kicked in 6 months after joining, and I guess Zwei just wanted to one-up him by getting kicked in 5 months instead. Now, Zwei was still an incredibly intriguing player, only being 18 years old and still very talented, so despite his disaster class tenure on Spirit, there was still one man in the scene who was willing to take a chance on him. After getting booted from VP, Major winning AWP IGL Jame was given the keys to Parivision. The roster went through a few iterations before getting to Jame, Belchanok, AW, Noda, and Zelo. 4 Russian rifling crackheads and a Sigma male leader. This Parivision team would then go on an incredibly similar major run to what Namiga and Zwei did at Austin, making the top 16 at Budapest before running into Mouse, Na'Vi, and 3D Max. Overall, an incredibly impressive run that had opened up the scene's eyes. Maybe James still had a little bit of juice left in the tank. After this major, Parivision would make the decision to replace AW with Zwei. Most people thought this was actually a good move. Despite him not looking great on Spirit, surely Jame and Dastan would know how to use him a little bit better. What we didn't know is this quite possibly could have been the best roster move of the entire roster mania. The first event of 2026 was Blast Bounty, where in the online portion, Parivision stopped ENCE and Astralis to make the LAN finals. During this online portion, Zwei dropped a 1.61 rating, looking like the demon that we had seen on Namiga. Playoff teams for this event were Parivision, Falcons, Liquid, Heroic, Furia, Gamer Legion, Vitality, and a team Zwei knew very well in Spirit. Now, Blast Bounty had a different format to most tournaments, as once we get to the playoffs, teams actually pick their opponents. And for the draft show, and guess who was the one to pick who Parivision would play?
Next is Parivision. And Zwei, you've been sent out for this.
Yes.
How did this happen? How did they say, Zwei, this is your job now? You're going to be the one doing this.
No, I asked it myself.
You asked? Oh, I like this. This is good. Why did you ask?
Because I knew what's coming. And I wanted some hype.
Who is Parivision picking, Zwei?
Parivision is picking Team Spirit.
The man who replaced Magix, and then in turn got replaced by Magix a few months later, would be playing each other in the quarterfinals. They definitely played up the beef for the bit, but I'm sure there is at least a little bit of a real grudge there. A slight one at least. And not only that, Magix tries to be an aura farmer. And well, right now it seemed like he was the one getting aura farmed by Zwei. The next step at this point to complete this aura farming was to beat Spirit, but Magix was not going to let him take his crown that easily. The first map would be a blowout 13-5 and Magix would play out of his mind. Zwei would drop a 0.82 rating and Magix a 1.53. Oh no. But then we would have Mirage and Parivision would win 13-9. Zwei would be the second highest rated player on his team with a 1.11 and Magix would only post a 0.99, along with Spirit having a pretty brutal T side. The last map would be Ancient, where the first half would end 7-5 in favor of Parivision. The new IGL and Magix would need to call an incredibly good T-side for them to win this game, but Spirit would only win one gun round the entire half, losing 13-8. In his first tournament with his new team, Zwei had beaten Spirit, but it didn't even end there, as after this, Parivision would go on to win the entire event, keeping Zwei's streak alive of joining a team and immediately afterwards winning the first tournament. After a fairly successful stint as the Opera and Gamer Legion, Nock would get his chance to play on the 11-ranked fully Swedish team NIP. It seemed like a perfect match. But in 2020, NIP didn't do much, making the playoffs of a few tier 1 tournaments, but not really being close to winning them. And during this year, Nock would post a 1.07 rating. But then in 2021, things just kept getting worse, as he would go down to a 102, and NIP, while making some good runs like a semi-final at ESL Pro League, were now also bombing out of tier 2 events. So NIP decided enough was enough, and signed Opera Device from Astralis. This move was unbelievable at the time. It really did shock everyone, and while the move was crazy, it was also without a doubt an upgrade, and even Nock at the time understood this. You do kind of have to feel bad for the guy though. He got to play a total of 2 LANs with the team, and then everything went to online. It was a brutal time to have first joined a team. After this, he would sit on the bench for 8 months before eventually joining Apeks in early 2022. Playing wise, not much happened, as Apeks was just a tier 2 team throughout this year, but Nock was playing well with a 1.16 rating. The real storyline for Nock though was that in May of this year, it was learned that he may be taking legal action against his former team. It seemed that there was a dispute between NIP and the players for sticker money from the cancelled 2020 IEM Rio Major. Dextero wrote that tournament was cancelled due to safety concern amid rising numbers in cases in the host nation. Afterwards, the in-game capsules went on sale. According to sources close to the player who requested anonymity, Nock, who was on the NIP roster at the time, believes they have a contractual claim to the earnings from the sticker sales. You see, for every Counter-Strike major, there are stickers for the teams and individual player signatures, and Valve gives a percentage of these sales to the teams and players, which can add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Since the major was canceled, it was a bit of a strange situation. Like, sure, the tournament never happened, but the stickers were still in-game and people were buying them, so Valve still sent out the money to teams. And NIP thought since the tournament was never played, they would just be able to keep the money for themselves. According to the Counter-Strike Professional Players Association, NIP was the only organization who did this. The amount theoretically owed to each player is believed to be in the region of $200,000 to $300,000, based on what other players from Legend status teams received, although this might vary slightly from team to team due to specific contractual agreements. The root of the player's claim lies in section 5.4 of their player contracts. There it states the following: the team shall receive 16.67% of the team's stickers money earned by the player. The player shall receive the remaining 83.33% of the team's sticker money divided with his teammates. The player shall allocate 2% of the player's sticker money to a marketing fund dedicated to the CSGO team. Teams shall, when receiving the sticker money, deduct and transfer to a dedicated bank account. The funds shall be spent on initiatives approved by the CSGO team. Minimum 4 members of the CSGO team have to approve how the monies are spent. The player shall receive 100% of the individual sticker money, which is allocated to the players. However, the management at VP do not believe that this clause obligates them to pay the players any money for this specific capsule. Rather, they believe that it was Valve's intention for the esports organizations to retain all of the proceeds from this release as a means of financial relief during the pandemic. The official CSGO blog post announcing the release of the capsule stated, "For these stickers, 50% of the proceeds directly support the teams," which leaves the specifics out. It was then believed the team used this sticker money to buy out device from Astralis. This situation is fucked, especially for Nock. Imagine you are getting scammed out of potentially $300,000, and then that money is immediately being used to fund your replacement. Personally, I am crashing the fuck out. All things considered though, Nock did handle this fairly well, only threatening to sue when realistically the CEO deserved a left hook to the jaw. Then 2023 would come around, and Apeks would make it through the Blast TV Paris qualifier. But unlike Namiga at Shanghai, they'd actually squeak through the RMR, going 3-2. Then in the challenger stage of this tournament, Apeks would begin cooking, going through 3-1 and only losing to G2. Nock would be the highest rated player on the team with a 1.18. And before we get into the main stage of the major, I should give you a little bit of background on the team. Along with Opper Nock is JL, Jacob, Kixon, and Sticko. Sticko and Jacob had been in the tier 1 space for a while, and I guess Nock too at this point, but Kixon was a fairly new IGL in the space, along with one of the riflers for the team in JL. They were an exciting mix of young talent and veteran players, but the main stage of the major was looking like it might be just a little too much for them. They'd lose to Heroic and Gamer Legion while beating Into the Breach and Bad News Eagles, putting them in a 2-2 game. If you lose, you're out, and if you win, you're in the playoffs. In this 2-2 game, to make the playoffs of the last ever CSGO major, Apeks would need to play Ninjas in Pajamas. This would be Nock's first time playing them since he was benched in 2021. Now, the team was drastically different from the one that he was on, as the device signing ended up being a flop. The team was solid with him on it, but it didn't last very long as he'd begin to have health issues very quickly and need to be benched in late 2021. Now, the only remaining teammate of Nock's was Rez, and with him now was Hedgehog, Alexi B, Brolin, and Config. But it wasn't the players that Nock had an issue with, it was the organization. So if he could knock them out of the major while propelling himself into the playoffs, oh my god, would that feel good. The first map would be Vertigo, and it would be so close they'd need to go into overtime, where Apeks would barely squeak by 19-17. Map 2 would be Ancient, and it was looking like a disaster. NIP would take the lead 14-3, but somehow, round after round after round, Apeks would continue to win. But then NIP would finally break through and go up 15-11. It looked like they would finally be able to close it out, but we all know from Boston that 15-11 is a cursed scoreline. At 14-15, it would come down to a 3v3.
Bomb gets picked up. They're surrounded on the site. He's gonna pull it out, but Jacob slides forward. Config hands busy. Head trick finally connects, but there's just no time. Apeks have ran this back.
A 3v3 that Apeks would win, and they'd bring the game into overtime. Going into OT at this point, Apeks had all of the momentum, and they'd win the first 2 rounds. Then Apeks would go up 18-16, and Nock would be in a 1v2 to win the game.
Brolin's walking. Nock hits the shot. Rez is gonna stick this, or Nock gets him off. And now time is gonna decide.
After Apeks would win, Kixon would scream over to NIP, "Who the fuck are you benching?" And after the game, Nock would tweet this: "Karma sure does exist. GG at NIPCS." Apeks would end up making the semifinals of this major, losing out to the eventual winner in Vitality. But I'm sure Nock was more than happy with the team's result. In mid-2017, ENCE was a completely dead team, having dropped their entire roster after being ranked in the 200s and not really accomplishing much. But then at the start of 2018, the Finnish organization decided it was time for them to try and make a comeback. So they'd sign legendary Finnish opper Alu and surround him with a bunch of players that no one had ever heard of. It was a bunch of tier 2 Finnish riflers and Alu, who had recently played on Optic, FaZe, NIP, Mouse, and placed in the top 20 in 2015. It was certainly an interesting team. And well, before long, it actually turned out they were kind of goated? 2 Tier 2 tournament wins and barely missing out on the IEM Cologne playoffs, losing in the lower bracket final to Prime 2018 Simple 1-2. Who the fuck were these guys? It had been 3 months and the team jumped from 193 ranked in the world to number 13. Well, after they'd run off 2 more tournament wins. They then won an S tier tournament in November. Well, I'm an S tier tournament. I mean, look at these teams. But even though it was a fake S tier tournament, there were still a few top 10 teams in attendance, so it was incredibly impressive for ENCE nonetheless. It seemed like they might be the hottest team in all of Counter-Strike, besides Prime Astralis, of course. And this would continue as they'd win 3 more events and qualify to the organization's first ever major. They'd then prove that they actually were the hottest team in CS, making it through both groups, beating Liquid in the quarters, and getting revenge on Simple and Na'Vi for Cologne in the semis. Somehow this team that was originally Alu and 4 tier 2 Finnish players was in the final of a major. Every player on this team was locked. Alu was proving he still had it. X7 was like a Finnish Zipnix. Cool, calm and collected, always chewing on his gum and clutching rounds for the team. Sergey was a little fetus crackhead star rifler. Ariel was there. And the man who was the brains behind the whole operation was 21-year-old IGL Alexi B. Unfortunately for the team in these finals, I'd go on to meet the actual hottest team in Counter-Strike and lose. But after this, ENCE would go on to win another S-tier tournament and actually hit a peak of number 2 in the world. And they were now consistently staying in the top 5. This is when at the organization's second ever major appearance, we'd get the news that ENCE was actually kicking their IGL because the team thought they needed more firepower. And despite this news, ENCE would still make the playoffs, but after this tournament and after Alexi B's official benching, things would get a little bit messy. A lot of conflicting statements would come out about how players on ENCE said they wanted to change Alexi B for months, but like in those couple months prior to this change, Alu also said they have the right players at the moment and they thought everything was fine. In an interview with HLTV, Ariel said the team wanted to change for several months. He also described the team's atmosphere as changing. Now playing is fun, it's what the team needed. According to Ariel, the new in-game leader Alu had a way of leading that was completely different, and that Alu likes to try new things. While with Alexi B, they always played the basic game in the same way. We've been stuck, and that was one of the reasons for the change. Our training motivation was weak, and we wanted more firepower. Getting Sunny helped us mentally. Of course, we believe that we will do even better in the future. Alexi B then went on to tweet, "What the fuck did I just read?" Eventually, Alexi would go on to get snatched by OG, and very shortly afterwards, he'd get to play his old team. ENCE and OG would be in the same group of Ice Challenge 2020. And they'd be playing each other in the first match. Alexi B would then, of course, go on to lock the fuck in. Alexi B and OG would go on to beat ENCE 2-0, and on Overpass, ENCE's old in-game leader would fry them with a 1.61 rating and 21 kills. I mean, my god, this might be the most kills I have ever seen Alexi B ever have. He'd also have this 1v3 to damn near close out the map.
What's going on? Whoa, that's a problem. Flashed off. Alexi B's got one of his own, and now he sees the Molotov go a little bit deep. He can use the railing, can't quite spot the bomb. He's got to get a jump shot. Oh, he does. He does get it, even though he was off of the aim. He's hit the second as well. They're on it, but this is done, surely. He just needs one bullet. He's lost the track of it, but he gets on the knife. And he just barely gets there in time to catch out X7.
Then in a post-match interview with HLTV, Alexi B would say this: "I think it would be naive for me to say that I didn't prepare for this match more than the others. It's something that is a bit personal, and I think every player in the scene who has been in the same shoes would handle the match the same way." Later on in his OG career, he'd play this Finnish ENCE team again, and once again, he would win. His lifetime record since leaving the team is actually 7-2, with him only playing the Finnish version twice and winning both times. After he would end his career in OG and bounce around a couple other teams, he'd eventually find his real home in Na'Vi, winning a major and multiple more S-tier tournaments. And as of today, he is the only player from that old ENCE roster who is still relevant. Sergey and X7 are both retired. Ariel is 32 without a team, and Alu is 33, also not playing for a real team. I mean, what a glorious video this has been today, fellas. I love a good old revenge match. I mean, dude, that knock one against NIP at the major, that is perfect. I mean, oh my god. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. That's it from me today. Like the video if you liked it, subscribing if you want to subscribe, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified. And I will see you guys later.